In this tense exchange during the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission (TRRc) hearings involving Mama Fatima Singhateh, the former Justice Minister under Yaya Jammeh, and lead counsel Yaya Jammeh, Singhateh, regarded as a favored figure among Jammeh supporters, chaired a 2011 tax commission. Jammeh pressed Singhateh to admit that the commission targeted Jammeh's political opponents by seeking out tax liabilities and wrongdoing. Singhateh strongly rejected this assertion, labeling it rubbish, and argued that she was not obligated to answer questions about the commission's actions due to legal protections granted to commission members. She cited the law that shields commission members from liability for official acts and suggested Jammeh consult the commission's report, which was public record for answers. The exchange was marked by notable tension between the two women, characteristic of their previous interactions.
Before we went on the break, we were talking about the 2011 tax commission, which you headed. And you had said something interesting, that we cannot ask questions about the tax commission that you sat on. Can you please provide any provision that exists that says that we cannot ask questions about the tax commission? I didn't say you cannot ask questions. I say you cannot ask me questions. Why? Because I presided over the tax commission, one. And the decision of the tax commission is similar to that of a decision of a judgment of a court. And no judge is required, is expected to explain the decisions that they have decided, they have rendered. That's why, as you said earlier, the commission is created by an act of law. And in this commission, you were not a judge. You were a commissioner. If you can provide for us any provision or any law that says we cannot ask questions on it, we will take that. One, I was a judge. Two, the provision under section 202 of the Constitution subsection 3, which says a commissioner appointed under section 200 shall not be liable to any action or suit in respect of any matter or thing bona fide done committed to be done in performance of his or her function as a commissioner. It therefore follows, if you are inquiring into the activities of any commission, that inquiry may lead to an action or suit in respect of the matter that was done in the commission. The provision is very clear. I am not under obligation to start explaining what happened, because the report is there for everybody to read it, to understand the rationale behind the decisions made, the recommendations that were made. In fact, the Supreme Court of the Gambia has already decided and upheld the decision of the tax commission. So that is that. Ms. Singhateh, I think you have misinterpreted that section of the Constitution.
Miss Singhateh fognane dal linga feñale fanna bobu du nonu.
Because I am not asking you about the findings, etc. I was merely asking you about people who were tasked to appear before the said commission. Because this commission is a truth-seeking commission and is looking into rights violations. And that commission was set up to target certain lawyers, certain companies, and people that Yaya Jammeh was not happy with. Fine, it was created by law, but it targeted people. Hence why I asked you how many lawyers were called to the commission. Can you remember or you don't remember?
I don't remember, but I know it's in the records of proceedings of the commission.
Do you know how many companies were called to that commission?
It's in the records of proceedings. I don't remember at the top of my head. At that time, when that commission was set up in 2011, is it correct to say that Yaya Jammeh himself was doing business and operating companies?
That's
over 10 years ago. I do not recall. Well, for the record and for the commission, Yaya Jammeh was operating companies and businesses at that time. Were any of his companies called to the said tax commission? I think I have given you my answer. I don't recall, but I know that everything we did was recorded. It's in the records of the proceedings, and it was in the reflected in the report. So all you need to do is just go through the report, and you have the answers to all the questions you're asking.
Yakarna tontu nala de mbolem luñ fatale kuma way mbolem luñ doon def ñu ko bind ci record yi tay tamé mu fa li ngay def rek moy dem ci record yoy set ko dang ko fa gis.
And the report is public document.
Tay tamé nak nek na kay go xamné ni kay ci ñepp la.
Well, to refresh your memory, none of Yaya Jammeh's companies were called to attend or answer any questions during that commission. And just as a point of correction, you were not sitting as a judge on that commission. You were the chair commissioner of the commission. And for the record and for the commission, it is to be established that that commission was set up purposely to target certain individuals and companies. At this point, I want to move to another issue. I want to raise some questions about the declaration of the Gambia as an Islamic state. Is it correct that you were the Minister of Justice at this time of the declaration? Yes, I was.
Wow, jamono bu man la won.
Can you tell this commission the advice you gave to the president after he made this declaration? I can tell you that I actually wrote an opinion about his declaration. I cannot remember the substance of the opinion. It's in the files. But in essence,
I had informed him
that
to declare for a state to become an Islamic state. There were certain procedures that we must go through. And that includes a referendum.
We'll get to that point.
But you asked me a question, you asked me what advice did I give. I'm telling you that I don't remember, but in essence, this is what I said.
You indicated that you had written an opinion.
Yes, I did.
I want to get on that point before we move further.
Okay.
Thank you. We have an opinion that was from your office. Signed by yourself. Dated the 8th of February 2016. With your permission, Mr. Chair, I would like the witness to look at the document. Would it be correct to say that opinion originated from your office?
Hold on, let me read it.
Is it correct that in that opinion you were actually advising as to how the republic can be changed to an Islamic state?
Yes.
And you had even gone to the extent of making comparison from 2 different jurisdictions.
To more than 2 different jurisdictions.
You talked about Pakistan. What other countries did you mention?
A few of them, but you also have to take it into context. So since we're talking to the Commission and member of the public, if you see from the first paragraph of my letter and my opinion, if I may be allowed to read it.
You may read it.
I had said before that everything I do, I reduce it into writing. My opinions are always clear. In that letter I wrote, I refer to the verbal directive made on the 30th of December 2015. For this office, that is the Ministry of Justice, to conduct research on the modalities for the effective establishment and functioning of an Islamic republic. The directive further directed that we seek guidance from systems such as Saudi Arabia, Mauritania, and Pakistan. Yes, so to look at it from the context. I had a meeting with him, informed him about the procedure that would be involved, that for a state to become Islamic, for the country to be an Islamic republic, this matter had to be brought to a referendum.
Thank you,
The Supreme Court, let me give you context, please. That the Supreme Court had already decided that Section 1 of the Constitution, which is an entrenched clause, cannot be amended without the input or the approval of the people. That means that it has to go through a referendum. It was following that advice. He still insisted that he wanted to go ahead. That's why I refer to the verbal directive that he made on the 30th of December. And in the opinion,
if you may allow me to guide you.
Okay.
You've talked about a referendum.
Yes.
And you've also talked about that he refused to accept that advice.
Well, he insisted on going ahead with it.
If you may look at this letter, which is dated the 15th day of February 2016, with your permission, Mr. Chair.
15th, that one is after this letter. So this letter was dated on the 15th of February. It follows the letter that I had written dated the 8th of February. And it refers to that letter. In that letter I had advised, that's why I wanted to go into details on that letter. In that letter I had advised that we had conducted in-depth research as per his directive at the systems of governance of 3 countries. We focused on the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Malaysia, and Islamic Republic of Mauritania. We give examples of the way those systems work. And we also highlighted the case, the situation, the legal system as it was, as it is. And we raised the issue of judicial aspect of Islam. And highlighted the fact that Malaysian judicial system is a bi-jural nature with large common law influences. Yes, and that it had more common law influence as opposed to Islamic law influence. And I elaborated more on that. And I stated that as a result of that, the foregoing, that given the Gambia's unique history, culture and social family ties, and other religious groups, a hybrid structure is proposed until all conditions necessary for an effective functioning of an Islamic state. And I said that recommendations are as follows: that if he wanted to proceed, there was going to be a short-term and long-term plan. And one of the recommendations, hold on, I'm referring.
May I lead you, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Do not read all the recommendations.
No, I'm not. I'm just reading
because it is very long.
Yes, I understand.
Yes.
So I'm just reading paragraph 1. Paragraph 1 talks about the formal name. The recommendation was maintain the formal name of Republic of the Gambia on official legal documents.
The Republic of the Gambia.
Since a change of name without fulfillment of all constitutional requirements will resort to adverse legal complications. I also stated that it is particularly relevant in agreements and contracts which have great benefits to the government, but could be challenged in court and declared null and void due to the non-fulfillment of all legal and constitutional requirements necessary. I also stated that a referendum to take into consideration popular opinion on the proposal of Gambia becoming an Islamic state, as well as the fulfillment of constitutional requirements for amendment of an entrenched clause. I also suggested that we continue to promote equality for all persons, all faith, and all gender before the law.
ci kaw loolu nag ci lañ war di continuer nag di siiwal emale goo xam ne dana nekk ci diggante diine yi diggante góor ak jigéen ak itamit ci leneen yu ci dëpp.
So there are many proposals and recommendations, but this is just some of it.
am na nag ràññeef yu bëri yoo xam ne nii bind nañ ko waaye nag yii rek mooy yenn ci ñoom.
So to go to the letter that was just handed over to me dated the 15th of February.
nag ñu dem nag ci lettre bi nga xam ne moom lañ ma bind fukki fan ak juróom ci weeri février.
From the office of the Secretary General.
jógee ko ci office ci Secretary General bi.
The Secretary General signed the letter.
Secretary General bi signé lettre boobu.
And he was conveying an executive directive.
te moom nag mu ngi doon àggale ak ndogal digal boo xam ne ni mu ngi jógee ko ci président bi.
To the effect that.
ci anam bu ne.
That the Gambia will continue to be called Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
ne Gambia dafay dañ koy continuer di ko ooyee Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
And that the Republic will adhere to the status of a truly Islamic and not a pseudo-Islamic Christian state.
te tamit nag dana nekk nag loo xam ne dafa wane ne Islamic Republic la waaye du Republic boo xam ne diggante Islam ak Christianity.
And the Republic would have all the attributes of an Islamic state within 5 years.
te tamit nag dana am lépp loo xam ne ni aajo na ko di Islamic Republic si diirab juróomi at.
He also directed that therefore.
ci la bind tamit de wax joxe ndigal ne kon.
to task my office.
sas nag suma office.
to work on the constitution.
ñu liggéey nag ci constitution lu ay réew mi.
and take note that there will be no referendum on this issue.
te tamit ñu xam nag ne amul benn wote diggante déet ak waaw boo xam ne dañ ko def si mbir mi.
That the task force should initiate action.
ne task force boobu noonu nag foog si dañu jël ay jéego.
to establish institutions of Islamic State with Sharia laws.
foog ñu jaaral institution léew islamique boo xam ne ni danañ am ay Sharia loo ay Sharia.
analogous to the functioning of Islamic State of Saudi Arabia, Iran, Pakistan, and Mauritania.
doxalin bi nga xam ne mu ngi nekk islamique bu réewi arab yooyu mu tudd noonu.
That the Sharia judicial system
ne ate Sharia bi
should be fully fledged by 30 December 2021.
te ne dana war a dox nag niki ñaar fukki fan fanweeri fan ci weeri décembre atum 2021.
That in the process of requisite institutions should be set up.
ci kaw nag yi nga xam ne nii mooy buntu liggéeykaay yi koy war a doxal foog si ñu taxawal leen.
Trainees identified for formal training.
ràññee ay njàng yoo xam ne nii pour yenn njàngal.
in Sharia jurisprudence and Sharia courts function.
ni nga xam ne noonu la ñuy doxalee lépp loo xam ne mu ngi aju ci wàlli kooti Sharia yi la ak itamit luwaay Sharia yi.
That is it. That is all.
kon nag foofu la leetar bi jeexee.
And that letter was addressed to yourself.
letter boobu nag yow lañ ko yónnee woon.
Yes, it was addressed to my office.
waaw ñu ko yónnee suma office.
Can you read the addressee in that letter?
Attorney General, Minister of Justice.
letter bi nag mu ngi jëm ci Attorney General, Minister bi saytu wàlli.
May I have the letter,
ak
please?
atte.
The letter was personally addressed to you.
If it was personally addressed to me, it would have been Mama Fatima Singhateh. It was addressed to my office as Attorney General Counsel.
bu fekkee ne letter bi dañ ma ko jëwoon suma tur lañ fa doon bind Mama Fatima Singhateh.
The letter was addressed the Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Then it said Ministry of Justice. So it was addressed to you as you held that position at that particular time.
dañ ministre bi nga xam ne moo saytu wàllu loi ak àtte ci office ministre bi saytu bi loi ak àtte bon te yow yaa fa nekkoon.
Can you tell this commission the actions you took after you received the directive dated the 15th of February 2016?
nga mën a wax commission bi nag lan nga def gannaaw boo jotee leetar bii nga xam ne ñu ngi ko bindoon fukki fan ak juróom ci at.
I believe there was a task force.
yaakaar naa amoon na genn kuréel goo xam ne nii muy task force.
chaired by the Secretary General.
jiite ko nag di Secretary General bi.
consisting of some personalities.
nga xam ne nii boo ko na ci nag di ay yenn nit.
May I stop you there?
Okay.
I believe you replied to the directive.
foog naa tontu woon nga de.
On a letter dated the 14th March 2016.
letter buñ binda fukki fan ak ñeneen weeri March 2016.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I would like the witness to see this letter. That letter is a reply to the directive you received.
letter boobu dang ko tontu ci ndigal yi nga xam ne moom nga jotoon.
And in the same letter, you're actually referring to the opinion you had sent initially.
te ba tay ci lettre bi day yang ci do wax mbiri yow li won sa gis-gis ci lettre bang leen jëkkoon a yónnee.
Is it correct that in this letter you indicated that a task force should be set up?
Ndax mun nañoo wax ne lettre bi waxoon nga ci ne nañ tànn ay jàmbur.
Actually, the task force was already instructed to be set up in that letter, the previous letter of the 15th of February.
ci lettre bi jiitu bi nag ci lañ joxe woon ndigal ne daal way tànneef yooyu noonu jàmbur yooyu nañ leen sos.
And in this letter, I refer to the directive in said letter, referring to the task force to initiate action.
te lettre bi nag liñ ci wax mooy comme task force di jàmbur yooyu ñu santoon nañ jël ay jéego.
So it is therefore correct that in this letter you created the task force.
I did not create the task force. I sent recommendations of names for the task force.
Can you read the recommendations you sent for the task force?
Yes. I said, I hereby forward the following names for persons for the attention of His Excellencies to constitute a task force.
Mangi wax ne mangi ebal joxe nak xelaat pour ñu ci tour yu nga xamne ñom lay tuddu ci His Excellency nak pour task force comme way comme penci yu jambur yoy nga xamne ñom lañ wax ni ñu tan.
And the following people were proposed.
ñi nak ñom lañ tuddon
Alhaji Ousmane Dia.
Alhaji Ousmane Dia.
Kadi Omar Seka.
Kadi Omar Seka.
Alhaji Essa Dabo.
Alhaji Essa Dabo.
Alhaji Mbaye Saho.
Alhaji Mbaye Saho.
Dr. Omar Dia.
Dr. Omar Dia.
Mrs. Marie Sen.
Mrs. Marie Sen.
Dr. Abubakar Senghor.
Dr. Abubakar Senghor.
Mr. Lamin Kamara.
Mr. Lamin Kamara.
Mr. Abdoulaye Ba.
Mr. Abdoulaye Ba.
Those were the names that were recommended.
ñoy tour yi nga xamne nak yom lañ rañewon nañ.
Was the task force set up?
Ndax taxawal nañ won jambur yoyu?
Yes, the task force was set up.
Waaw jambur yoy na taxawalon nañ leen.
And the aim of the task force was to now find a way of implementing the Islamic State of the Gambia.
I
think it was more like looking at the feasibility of the Islamic State.
Can you repeat, please? Sorry.
I think it was on the feasibility of establishing an Islamic State.
Which goes to the same thing as they were set up to find a way that they could implement this directive that had stated that Gambia should change to an Islamic state.
If you say so.
Yes, I do. I believe you have your constitution with you.
Yes, I do.
May you open part 3, where it says legislative and other powers of the National Assembly.
What section?
100.
Yes.
You will see that on the section 1, 101.
Section 101.
It says the legislative power of the Gambia shall be exercised by bills passed by the National Assembly and assented to by the President. Is that correct?
Yes.
Which means in interpretation that even the President cannot make laws. It is only the National Assembly that makes laws.
That's very clear.
Thank you. At this point, I would like you to read subsection 2 of section 100 to the Commission.
That the National Assembly shall not pass a bill to establish a one-party state, establish a... Yeah. Establish a religion as a state religion. And alter the decision or judgment of a court in any proceedings.
Thank you, Ms. Singhateh.
You're welcome.
I think section 2B of the Constitution is stated clearly,
Section 2B
with no ambiguity. It says the National Assembly shall not pass shall not pass
duñ feeñal dara ci wàlli bunta boobu
a bill
muy loi boo xam ne
to establish any religion as a state religion.
taxawal benn diina boo xam ne mooy nekk diina réew ma.
Isn't that the advice that should have been given to the president when he declared a state to be Islamic?
loolu mooy ndigal li nga waroon a jox président bi bi mu waxee ne réew mi dafa war a nekk réewi islam.
That there was no need to write opinions actually comparing other jurisdictions, etc., on Islamic implementations.
jarutoon sax ngay méngale ci yeneen réew lu aju ci wàlli doxalini islam.
And what makes you think I did not advise that?
lan moo tax nga foog ne daal joxuma ko digal boobu.
Well, you have told the commission that you write very well.
Yes, I do.
It was not in your opinion.
It was not. I refer to a verbal directive after a discussion I had with His Excellency.
Everything you said in that verbal directive was actually stated mainly in the letter that you read, which gave you the directive to go ahead and implement the Islamic State.
I gave the advice verbally, and he responded and gave a verbal directive, and I implemented and reduced that verbal directive into writing, and still went ahead with the process of implementation.
dama ko yedda nak ci ay cadeau ñun ci cadeau mu dal di joxe ndigal ci cadeau nak ci la bind nak li ci ay kayit.
And the process of implementation
ci anami niñ koy doxale nak
includes
boole nañ ci nak ne
the issue of a referendum.
lu jëm ci wàlli wote diggante waaw ak déet ñu xamé ko referendum.
So no matter however you take it, no matter how up and however you look at it,
ak noko munti xolé noko munti gisé,
it would still become an issue for the decision for the people of the Gambia.
ba légui rek da fay nek dogal bo xamné mu ngi jëm ci wàlli ni ci Gambia.
So whatever you look at it, however you look at it, a referendum would still be required.
Noko gisé rek referendum fokk ci rek ñu def ko.
And then the people would decide on what they want.
kon nit ñi danañu seet nak ci lan lañ bëgg.
And that would have been the end of it.
Tamit nak ci la doon di mujjé.
Actually, Mr.
Council, before you continue with that one, Commissioner Jones wanted to raise a point of order. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Council, it will be very helpful to the Commission if Ms. Singhateh can read the response to the letter, the executive directive received on 15th of February, because we are missing some content from her response. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll hand back the letter to her to be read.
She to read the entire letter.
Thank you. Would you like me to read the whole letter?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Reference is invited to reference number. That was the letter I had sent to the office of the President.
li nga xamné ni mu ngi jëbal bop na ci lettre bi nga xamné mom lañ jëkëna jël ci office of the president bi.
On the above.
ci liñ bind ni ci kaw.
And hereby convey executive directive.
ak fi mu nekk ni fii nag ñu ngi àggale nag li nga xam ne nii mooy ndigal loo xam ne mu ngi jóge ko ci président bi.
To the effect that the Gambia will be called an Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
pour commencer nag di Gambia di muy Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
And the republic would adhere to the status of truly Islamic and not a pseudo-Islamic Christian state.
te tamit nag bu boobaa nag dana nekk na réew moo xam ne nii dafay doxee nii Islamic réew waaye duut na boo xam ne nii Islam ak Christian réew.
That the republic will have all the attributes of an Islamic state within 5 years.
te tamit nag dana am lépp loo xam ne nii lamboo na ko nag di Islamic state ci diirab juróomi at.
The directive further task you.
kon nag ndigal bi dal dina la jox ndigal.
To work on the constitution.
pour nag ñu liggéey ci constitution di loi république bi.
Sorry, Ms. Singhateh, I'll interject. I meant the response to the letter that was dated on the 15th, not the letter that came from the SG. Your response to the letter, whereby you gave recommendations. And could you please cite the date as well, please?
Yes, it says the 14th of March.
li na fukki fan ak ñeenti ci weeri March la.
And I indicated
te tamit wane naa fa.
that I refer to the letter dated the 15th of February.
ne lettre bi nga xam ne ñu ko bind fukki fan ak juróom ci weeri February.
With reference number.
reference number bi.
The reference is indicated.
wane nañ ko fa.
Which was a response to my letter of the 8th of February.
nga xam ne nii mooy tontu suma lettre bi bindoon fukki fan ak juróom-ñetti fan ci weeri February.
The directive given in said letter.
ci ndigal bi nga xam ne moom lañ bind ci leetar boobu.
was inter alia.
moom nag ca njëlbeen.
in quotes.
comme ni nga xam ne noonu lañ ko tànnee loolu lañ ci seppee.
a task force to initiate action.
ne nag am na pour kuréel goo xam ne nag mu jël ay jéego.
to establish the institutions.
pour nag mu dal di taxawal nag buntu boo xam ne nii.
of an Islamic state with Sharia laws.
yu jëppook Islamic state ànd ak luwaay sari.
analogous to the functioning of Islamic State of Saudi Arabia.
loo xam ne dina mel ni Islamic state bu Saudi Arabia.
Iran, Pakistan and Mauritania.
Iran, Pakistan ak Mauritania.
End of quote.
ñu dal di jeexal nag nañ ko seppee.
And I continued.
ma continuer.
In this regard,
ci kaw bunta boobu nag.
I forward the following names for person.
maa ngi ebal nag ñi turi ni ñi nga xam ne moom mu leen a lim si nii.
for His Excellency to select.
pour nag His Excellency mu tànn.
to constitute the task force for work to commence.
pour continuer nag task force boobu di wéy pencam jàmbur yooyu nag pour ñu continuer commencer.
The executive directive above.
ci ndigal li nga xam ne ni mu ngi jóge ko ci président bi ci fii ni ñu ko feeñalee ci kaw.
And the following persons were proposed.
nit ñi muy tudd si nii nag ñoom lañ ci xalaatoon.
Would you like me to go through the names, the list?
Yes, please, you may continue.
Dr. Alaji Usman Jah. I have number 1, Alaji Usman Jah.
No, continue.
Oma continue.
Wow.
Kadi Omar Seka, Alaji Esa Dabo, Alaji Mbai Saho, Dr. Omar Jah, Mrs. Marisen, Dr. Abubakar Senghor, Mr. Lamin Kamara, Mr. Abdoulaye Ba.
tur yooyu mu tudd nag mooy ñi nga xam ne nii ñoom lañ xalaatoon pour ñu nekk pencum jàmbur yooyu nga xam ne nii ñooy task force buy waral na doxal mbir mi.
Yeah.
Is that the end of your response?
Yes. The rest is a proposal that in order to be more productive, the task force should be kept small.
Please just read to the end of the letter.
Yeah.
That's it. I'll hand it over back to the chairman. It's just the content of the letter.
Okay. It's proposed that in order to be more productive, the task force be kept small.
nag seen comité pencam weytaan ñooñu dañ war naa nekk lu néew.
His Excellency is hereby requested to choose 4 or 5 persons from the persons listed above.
te tamit président bi ñeent ba juróomi nit rek lay tànn nag ci ñooñu nga xam ne ñoom lañ doon tudd sànq ci gannaaw.
If the need arises, assistance could be sought from other persons for specific purposes.
bu fekkee nag ne aajoo nañ ko nag danañ war a aw ndimbal ci ñeneen.
It is further proposed that the office of the president could chair this task force.
te tamit nag xalaat nañu tamit ne ñii di ku penc jàmbur yooyu noonu nag office of the president ñoom ñooy leen ay jiite.
To ensure transparency.
pour gis ne njub.
and expeditious compliance with timelines.
ak tamit nag mu gaaw ànd ak li nga xam ne loolu lañ natt si waxtu bi mu war a sotti.
And the Ministry of Justice will coordinate the affairs of the task force.
te ministre bi saytu wàllu loi ak àtte si réew mi danañ taxaw nag li nga xam ne mooy doxalin comité wéy tànneef yooyu.
Should His Excellency have any other person in mind,
bu fekkee nag ne président bi am na keneen koo xam ne ni xalaat na ko ci.
they could also be added to the list above.
mun nañ ko boole nag ci limi ñi nga xam ne ñoom lañ tudd si gannaaw si kaw.
The foregoing is hereby submitted for executive approval.
ci lii nag daal dinañ ko àggale nag pour ñu wéral ko.
Or for the directive.
wala tamit ci yeneen i ndigal.
That is it.
foofu la leetar bi am.
Thank you. I hand it back over to you, Chair.
Thank you. Council, can you pass the letter for the commissioners to see, please?
Yes. Mr. Usher, can you take the letter round? We shall tender these documents
Yes, I know.
at the ending of the proceedings.
It might be helpful if we see the documents as well.
Yes.
Before tendering, otherwise the commissioners wouldn't have seen. Thank you very much. You may proceed, Council, please.
Thank you. Ms. Singhateh.
Yes.
Looking at the provision in the Constitution,
Yes.
which has clearly stated that the National Assembly cannot pass any bill to change this country into any other sort of state in particular when it comes to religion. This advice should have been made clear in writing to the president. Since you're very good with writing in everything. This action put us in chaos as the Christians got confused. Even us Muslims, especially legal practitioners, got confused. Because we were worried and did not know what sort of state we would be in. And what laws would be governing us. The directive should not have been followed to actually recommend people to start a task force.
Would you
like me to respond?
If you want to.
Yes. I know that there are other correspondences relating to this subject matter. And from those correspondences, you will see even the task force when it was set up, the members of the task force were quite hesitant. Because they knew that this was something that cannot happen immediately. So what they were talking about is trying to see how to convince the president to maintain the status quo and walk towards a future. There was a recommendation of time frame, I don't recall, but it's in the letter.
Ms. Singhateh, it was not the responsibility of the task force to convince the president. It was your responsibility as the advisor to advise him according to the law, especially the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
I hear you, Council, but what the Council you should know, you should be aware of, and what this Commission needs to be aware of, and what the members of the public listening in need to be aware of.
Council yow li nga wara xam ak kilifa yi nga xamne ñoo sekk commission bi liñ wara xam ak nit ñi ñuy déglu liñ wara xam.
That because even though I am the principal legal advisor,
principal legal advisor
and yes, I'm supposed to advise on the law, but the president had other advisors, including religious advisors. So if my advice as a lawyer is in conflict with a religious advisor, knowing that this is what he wants, there is no way that he would accept my advice. But my advice has always been there. And it was clear. So if based on his religious advisor, still wanted to proceed with his proclamation, then that was up to him. He was the elected official. He was the one voted into office by the people. So the people in the end would have to decide.
Ms. Singhateh,
that's it.
The religious leaders cannot advise the president on the Constitution. Again, that was your role. And the opinion that has been seen before this commission did not table that aspect of the Constitution. Instead, it continued to give him the courage that he could change this country into an Islamic state. And stated ways, and even compared with other jurisdictions. We cannot buy that. That he took advice from religious leaders. If he was not taking your advice, then it means your position was vacant. You were just there.
That's your opinion.
Well, that's what you stated, that he was not taking, if he does not take your advice, you stated it. What use does it make? If you advise he does something different, if it was someone else, they might even resign, because then they're no longer fulfilling the position that they're sitting in.
I was actually carrying out my responsibility issuing advice. The responsibility for accepting the advice does not rest upon me.
That was
in this instance, you did not advise the president accordingly as stated in the Constitution.
That's your opinion.
And we will leave it to the commission to decide on the issues before them. At this point, I would like to move to the issue about the political persons that were arrested and detained in April of 2016. We have evidence that several people were arrested and detained in April. 2016. And all the offenses they were charged with were bailable. But your office denied them bail. Can you tell the commission why this was the situation?
Can you be specific as to the people that were arrested? I don't know what you're talking about.
Fatima Jawara, Njogonjai, etc. Sure, those two names I've named will make you remember.
Well, you know that bail is granted by the court, not the Aegis chambers. You also know that arrest and detention is done by the police and not the Aegis chambers. So I'm surprised that you asked me that question.
As the advisor to the people and responsible for the administration of justice, when these atrocities came to your attention, that women in particular were being arrested, were being beaten, were being detained over 72 hours, you should have taken action.
How do you know I knew that? At the time.
Get to that.
How do you know I knew that at the time?
The lawyers who were defending these women would always want to make an application for bail. And the DPP then would say to them his hands are tied and he would have to talk to the Attorney General before he can make any decisions. That is how I know it was.
No,
That is news to me. That is news to me. Because I have never gone to court to actually argue a bail application. So for DPP to say that he was waiting on instructions from the Attorney General, when he had the discretion to decide, I'm surprised.
We know during that time the DPP did not have a discretion. That everything that was being done in the country, in the judiciary, in the courts was directed by Yaya Jammeh. And the DPP would obviously have to get instructions from you as you receive the directions from Yaya Jammeh. And the directives.
I can assure you that that was not the case in this instance.
Okay. I'll leave that to the Commission to decide.
Please do.
On the issue further, it was all over the news, all over the world. And it was heard by everybody that these women in particular were arrested, were beaten, were kept in detention when the charges levied against them were bailable. So you ought to have known. And you ought to have done the necessary. As the Attorney General yourself, you're even allowed to appear before the courts based on the Constitution. You yourself could have appeared and told the court, we are not opposing bail in these matters. Being a woman, being an activist, being someone who has always handled women issues.
I can assure you, I did not know.
We will leave that issue for the Commission to decide.
Very well.
We also have information that when Fatou Camara was arrested, you were given directives by the President, then Yaya Jammeh, to ensure that she will be charged with an offense.
I can assure you that's definitely not true. And I say so because an opinion was written on that case, and it went through the usual process that it usually goes through. The person who wrote the opinion is alive and well, and he recommended for the discharge of the case. DPP approved it. It came upstairs. We approved it. So that one I can assure you most definitely is not true. That assertion is most definitely false.
That assertion is true because you even had a meeting with officials from the NIA headquarters about how you could prosecute Fatou Camara.
That is false. That is most definitely false. That is most definitely false. And this forum being a truth commission, you should base your allegations on truth and not on hearsay. That I can assure you 100% is false. I never met any NIA. I never discussed this case. The only person I discussed this case with was the DPP when he suggested his opinion, and I approved. So that one is completely and utterly false and ridiculous. I would emphatically deny it 100%, 150%.
We will allow the Commission to decide on the issues.
The Commission can decide.
However, you were aware that she was detained at mile 2?
I was not aware.
At NIA?
I was not aware. I was not aware. This incident happened in October. I assumed office in August. The only time I knew about it was when I saw the case file. And even I myself accepted that yes, there was no case against her. Every allegation that was made against her was just relating to her personal decisions and had nothing to do with law. That one I can assure you 100%.
Are you telling this commission that you were not in office at the time of Fatou Camara's detention?
I was in office. I was telling you, I just assumed office. I assumed office in August. This incident happened in October. So I was telling you that I was familiar with the case. I saw it, but I know for a fact that I did not meet with NIA, and I know for a fact that the opinion that was written by counsel for the state in the criminal division was approved by me, approved by DPP and endorsed by me for the case to be discharged. That one I can tell you for free.
Ms. Singhateh, for clarification, were you the AG at the time?
I was. I'm telling you, it was in the earlier part.
Can you allow me to finish my questions and don't talk over me?
Go ahead.
Yes. To clarify, were you the minister at the time Fatou Camara was arrested and detained?
I
believe I was.
Wow, you were the minister.
Wow, yeah, I was minister.
And further, you were aware that she was detained at NIA.
No, I was not. It was until I received the case file.
And she was detained for 25 days.
Again,
without trial?
I do not know.
Without trial? Without access to a lawyer? And without access to her family? And you were aware, or you ought to have been aware as the minister?
I could not have been aware because I was not the person detaining her. It wasn't my ministry that detained her. I could not have aware because I was not the one who charged her or arrested her. I could not have been aware. The only time I became aware was when the file was brought to my desk to endorse the discharge of the suspect.
Munumon ko yek ndax duuton man ñoko tegon suma department ñoko tegon tuma ñoko téwon.
Ms. Singhateh, this matter was all over the media. And I know you listen to the media. Further to that, the file got to your office while she was still in detention. So it cannot be that your office or yourself did not know that she was in detention at Baba Dinka for 25 days unlawfully. In any event, if your office was even waiting further on investigations, etc., she should have been released on bail pending investigation. Because as per the Constitution, you cannot hold a person more than 72 hours without a charge.
That's your testimony.
And even though you were not the officer or the institution in charge of arrest and detention, you were fully aware of arrests that were going on rampantly in this jurisdiction. We all knew. But everybody was afraid to tell Yaya Jammeh the truth. And because of that, people's rights were violated in this jurisdiction. At this point, I shall be moving to the next issue, which is your role and the activities that you held during the impasse that this country suffered. Can you tell this commission the position you were holding during the impasse?
I was the Minister of Justice.
And it is correct that you attended a meeting where the president declared that he was not accepting the results.
No, I wasn't. No, I didn't.
During the impasse, did you attend any meeting with the president?
amna ben meeting bo xamne defoon nga ko ak president bi jamono joju mu bañé wacca.
What is the impasse?
Lan moy impasse bi féwolo politique bobu?
The period where Yaya Jammeh refused to leave this jurisdiction after he legally lost the elections.
Molu moy jamono ji Yaya Jammeh bañé genn réew mi gannaaw bu mu daano ci election bi.
Perhaps we need to clarify a few things.
Yaakaar naa foog ñu leeral yenn mbir fii.
That the mandate of the president expired after the 17th of January 2017.
Ne mandat yi président bi dana jeex fukki fan ak juróom-ñaar ci weeri.
Mr. Singhateh, I know the law.
No, please.
I know the law just as you do.
May I answer the question?
The point is, the president made a declaration that he is not accepting the results of the election and that he is not leaving the jurisdiction. Isn't that correct?
Amna loi de president bi dafa ne mom nanguwut election yi nga xamne non la téré té bon du génn réew mi.
You asked
Isn't that correct?
You cannot ask me to answer a question the way you want me to answer. I would answer it the way I can answer it.
This question is just a yes or a no.
There's no such thing as a yes or no answer.
There is.
No, there isn't.
Okay, so I am putting it to you that the president did refuse the election results and refused to leave the jurisdiction.
I am saying the president, yes, lost the election. And yes, conceded to the election loss. And then changed his mind as to the loss of election.
On a Friday, as usual. He always makes his announcements on Friday.
Please allow me to answer.
Go ahead.
And this was triggered by the declaration by IEC of two conflicting election results. This resulted to the president declaring that he no longer accepts the results. And it's normal for an election to be contested.
At this stage, what did you advise the president as the advisor?
Can you listen? Can you listen? At least may I be allowed to speak? You asked an open-ended question. Let me answer. His refusal to accept the election result is his right. What we all know is once his mandate expired, he would have to step down. And his mandate would have expired after the 17th of January. And he refused or reversed his decision to concede on the 9th of December. So you don't expect me to say yes to him refusing to step down because he was still president. There was no need for him to step down until the 17th of January.
Mama, I'm sorry. Ms. Singhateh, it was unlawful. And as it had been said by the Bar Association and followed by many others after, Yaya Jammeh caused treason by refusing the election results and refusing to step down. And he caused chaos. As you would see, mothers, children, etc. had to flee out of this jurisdiction because of his unlawful declaration.
Can we not confuse this, please? Can we not confuse this situation, please?
We are not confusing the situation.
No, you are making your own assertion. You were not there. I was there. So allow me to speak. And I'm not here to hold brief for President Jammeh. I am telling you what I saw and what I experienced. So if I may be allowed to speak, I can tell you. I know the whole nation is curious as to what happened during the impasse. And since I was there, I can tell you about my own lived experience.
Ms. Singhateh,
please.
The point is, there was an election.
Singhateh wax ji moy amon na sanim karta bu amon.
There was a winner.
Amna ku gagné.
There was a declared president.
Te waxon nañ kan mo wara nek president bi.
Yaya Jammeh conceded.
Yaya Jammeh nangu.
As usual, he flipped. He changed his mind and said, I own the Gambian people. I cannot let this go.
Did he say that?
He changed. And he said he was no longer leaving the seat.
That's not the way I saw it. And I was there. And I would like to refer you to section 49 of the Constitution.
At this point, I had asked you whether you had attended a meeting after Yaya Jammeh had lost the elections and refused to leave the jurisdiction.
He couldn't have refused to leave the jurisdiction because he was still in office. Okay. His mandate expired on the 17th of January. So unless that was when between the 9th of December and the 17th of January was what the impasse was all about. Anything after, he would have lost his mandate to stay in office.
It is clear that the president had said then, Yaya Jammeh, he will not leave. So we were not looking at the expiry date of his term, etc. He had already caused the treason by refusing the election results and saying he is not leaving the jurisdiction.
That's your opinion, but that's not true. That's a false assertion.
And I raised the question, which was simple, which referred to, did you attend any meeting where after the elections that Yaya Jammeh lost and did not leave? Did you attend a meeting during that period?
I attended a number of meetings up to the time my mandate expired on the 17th of January 2017.
Okay.
At this point, I will show you a particular meeting that you attended. Obi-Wan, can you play the video, please?
It's messed up. And so if I want a conflict, then that's the only time I say I'm the winner, because it is not clear. They have already made it clear that the results are, no matter what we do, it's not going to change the result. But at the same time also, they announced two results. After announcing the first one, they then came back the same day. Both of which were also signed by the IEC chairman. And then they came and said, this is what has happened. Now, it is unacceptable. So, what we are asking for is to go back to the electorate under an completely independent electoral commission that would supervise the elections as we used to do before without having any problem, and allow every Gambian to vote. But it is abnormal that you set up a time frame. In any country, anywhere in the world, I've been watching elections. If people are already at the polling station, you allow them to vote. I must accept all votes.
We've met with the Attorney General, and we're very proud of her. She's one of the several women we've met. When we went to Burundi, it was also a woman that was Attorney General of Burundi. And she received us very well. And lucky enough for us, in the African Bar Association, our Vice President for West Africa is a woman, the President of the Sierra Leone Bar Association. The Vice President in charge of East Africa from Uganda is also a woman. Then the Vice President for Southern Africa, the President of the Zimbabwe Law Society, is also a woman. So it's only one man that we have as Vice President Central Africa that's from Cameroon. So we are gender sensitive. So where there are women in the country and in the cabinet, there cannot be any problem, because there will always be solutions. So we thank the Attorney General and the Minister for Justice. She sat with us this morning and gave us a vivid version of what we have not even heard. There were certain things we were told. The Supreme Court it can't solve the problem because the government has refused to appoint judges for a long time. That's what's out in the press. And I asked the Attorney General, why are we not hearing this part of it? We were giving documents to show today that these things had been there. And some of the judges in these things, we know them because they are from our country. So we need to be truthful in whatever we are doing. We need to deal with everybody. We need to fear God in whatever we are doing because we are always answerable to God.
It seems like there was a mix-up with the videos that were played. However, the video that was played showed Yaya Jammeh giving an excuse as to how he would not accept the election results. It is clear that he caused treason. And should not have been giving such statements. And should have been advised by the Attorney General that he cannot be making such declarations. Okay, I understand they have the right video now. Obi-Wan, may it be played, please.
And the reason why I call you religious leaders, because people listen to you more than they listen to politicians. All I want us to do together is to reunite the country, reconcile and forget what has been said about us, what they have done to us and other people. All what I want is reconciliation so that the country continues.
The country, in spite of its geographical location in a very volatile region that is prone to all forms of instability, has always been synonymous with peace, stability, and security from the word go. But that peace, the president
said... Is
this
meeting being held?
Yes, with the religious leaders, yes.
Wow, kilifa diine yi, wow.
Can you tell us what was the intention of the meeting?
I heard it the same way everybody else did, for reconciliation.
And
for united the country.
Is that because that's the time Yaya Jammeh had decided he will not leave the presidency?
He did not tell me that he was not going to leave the presidency.
Well, in the essence of this meeting, he had indicated that he shall not be leaving the presidency. And he wanted the Gambian people to reconcile and forget about everything they had said about them. Seeming to mean that if we allowed him to stay, he would change his ways. As the Attorney General, you should have advised him not to even have such a meeting.
Attorney General,
in a meeting where he's trying to convince the Gambian people to allow him to stay. He should have been advised to accept the results and leave the seat peacefully when the time came. I shall be moving to the next issue, which is how the African Bar Association was encouraged to come and make statements on the election and meet with Jammeh. At this point, I will not ask the OB van to play the video because some of it was shown earlier on. Is it correct to say that you accompanied this said African Bar Association to meet the president?
No, I did not accompany them.
Did it?
However, they met you at State House.
State House.
Actually, they came to see me at my office. And introduced themselves. They said that they were concerned about what was going on in the Gambia. That they had an appointment to see the president. That it wasn't right for them to come to meet the president without seeing me as their colleague-in-law.
So
that's how I met them. And later on, I was invited to a meeting at OP.
On a meeting to office of the president OP.
And they were there as well.
Do you remember some of the statements they made on that day?
Vaguely.
But it seems like this time it was okay for non-nationals, non-Gambians to come in and talk about what is happening in our jurisdiction.
It was never not okay for non-Gambians to come and talk about what's happening in our jurisdiction. What I had said earlier, which you deliberately misconstrued, was the fact that if we had a problem in the house, and the house I mean the Gambia, it's very strange that outsiders would tell us about it, which I'm not accusing them of. But it was in the context of the political agreement. The political agreement we used to have, the meeting we used to have, was very interactive. So it was very friendly. So it wasn't as if I was accusing them.
Ms. Singhateh,
but I found it very strange that they would tell us about it whilst you all kept mute. That was the point I was trying to drive home. Not because they're foreigners, they said anything, but because my own compatriots kept mute about it. That was the point I was driving home at Ms. Dandinyai.
It's Mrs. Jabi now.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Jabi.
Thank you. Ms. Singhateh, to let you know, the way you had said it, I did not misconstrue it. Okay? The point is, we know Yaya Jammeh and his government frowned on non-nationals raising issues that affected the country. However, in this particular instant, because it was a comment that was buttering him up and in his favor, he allowed it to be televised.
It should
not have been allowed at that time when this country was in a state of confusion for foreigners to come and make pronouncements about our elections that were very clear. Simplicity, that was the issue. At this point, it would just be clear to state that you were one of the longest serving attorney generals, putting both your terms together.
I don't think so. I disagree, but I'm sure you must have your reason for saying that.
I will leave the commission to see the records on that. However, during your tenure, the Gambia was declared an Islamic state. The Gambia withdrew from the ICC. In December 2014, when there was the failed coup, many persons were arrested, including families of alleged coupists. During the term when you were in tenure, There were loads of arrest, detention, which were all unlawful. There were many laws that were kind of incorporated. There were laws that were passed, especially the LGBT rights.
LGBT rights. LGBT.
It affected their rights, and a law was even enacted, and they were prosecuted. Some were prosecuted, and it imposed capital offense. The record of the country under human rights was very poorly. The UN special rapporteurs were refused access to prisons, etc. We send reports that not really table out the violations in the jurisdiction. And it even got to a point we even stopped sending reports. As the Minister of Justice, it was your responsibility to advise, to ensure that none of these violations kept occurring in this country, especially those that affected the women. Thank you very much, Ms. Singhateh. At this point, I have no more questions.
I would like to respond.
You can do that in your closing remarks.
No, I would like to respond, Mr. Chair, because there were many issues raised here by council, and I just cannot, it cannot be swept under the rug under general remarks. I would like to be given an opportunity to respond to each and every false allegation made here.
Well, you can respond to questions that she has raised,
yes,
and the others are reserved for your closing remarks.
Yes, let me respond to the question.
Please proceed to
Thank you.
the questions.
Thank you. With regards to the failed coup, the coup was an attempted coup to overturn a legitimately installed government, which is treasonous. In any jurisdiction that you go to, coups are taken very seriously. I'm going to stop there at that. With regards to laws passed, I have never passed any law that violated any person's rights. The LGBTQ Act that you refer to, it was an amendment to an already existing act that had been enacted since 2005. And what I sought to amend was to protect people from being infected with HIV/AIDS through an LGBT relationship. The language of the law is there. Feel free to read it out for the whole world to hear. But my responsibility at the time was to protect every citizen in this country. There was already law in the books that was prohibiting LGBTQ relationship. That was in place since 2005. So I did not pass that law. The only amendment I made which carried a capital offense was the deliberate infection of HIV/AIDS through a homosexual relationship. Every other law I have passed have been progressive,
mu ngi doon dox am na jëm na jëm kanam.
have been protective.
te tamit doon na aar nit ñi.
have been in the best interest of the people of the Gambia.
te tamit doon na li nga xam ne ni mooy soxal nit ñi dëkkee ci réewi Gambia.
And the fact that you would forget about all those laws and highlight one law.
te tamit nga gis ne dangay fàtte yooyu yëpp dal di indi na benn loi rek.
which was an amendment to a 2005 act.
boo xam ne ni nag si soppali yoo xam ne am na si atum 2005.
means your intentions are not genuine.
moo mel ni sa jubluwaay bi de nekkul loo xam ne ni wér na.
And another thing.
ak beneen bi mooy.
it is important to remember.
baax na nag pour ñu fàttali.
my responsibility as Attorney General
was
effectively and efficiently executed to the best of my ability.
I
advised based on the law as I saw it. Yes, the rest I would state in my closing statement. But one thing I would add, all the statements here and the putting it to you here were all based on hearsay. Other than the issue of the Islamic State, there's nothing you can put your finger on that show that I deliberately acted in contravention to international human rights law. Or the Constitution of the Gambia, which is the foundation upon which all of us stand. Yes.
Commissioners, if you have any questions, please indicate. Imam Java, you have the floor, please.
Witness. Imam Jallo mola laaj mu ne seede bi.
I want you to clear a few points for me here.
Dafa am yu ma bëgg na nga leeralal ma ko fii.
When the election results were announced, everybody saw clearly that Yaya Jammeh had lost. The fact that they said there are some mistakes in the counting and still upheld that he actually had lost the elections. Do you think it was right for him to still say that he is not moving out of his seat? That's question number one.
Should I answer or you want to ask all the questions?
No, take this question first. I want to take them serious.
Yes. Let me answer?
Yeah, please.
Yes. Thank you so much for asking that question. To answer directly, no, I don't think it was fair for him to say he was not going to step down. But you also have to look at the context, Imam. When the declaration of election loss was announced, he conceded. In fact, we were all preparing for the transition process. When IEC declared another set of results that was conflicted to the first set of results, it triggered the impasse. Under any laws, any electoral laws, once the electoral administration issues two conflicted results, they have tainted the election results. So the president was in his right to protest. How we went about it was wrong. And I agree with you to that extent. But to be quite clear, Our roles as cabinet
suñ wàll nag nekk ay cabinet ministre yi
and my role as Minister of Justice
ak suma wàll ne maay ministre bi saytu wàlli loi ak àtte ci réew mi
provided him with the information as to the state of affair.
dal di woon na ko jox na bataaxel li nga xam ne mooy tëddalin bi jëm ci réew mi jamono boobu
as to what was right and what was wrong.
ci li nga xam ne nii moo nekkoon li war a am ak li nga xam ne nii moo warut a am.
So we did not renege on our responsibilities to advise and to be of service to the people and the country.
ne ko nag suñu warugal li nga xam ne ni mooy yaacaaral rek li nga xam ne mooy suñu wàll ci réew mi ak ci nit ñi fi dëkk.
Thank you.
You talked about human rights.
wax nga yelleefi doomu aadama.
And you gave the comparison
te méngale nga it
at forums in the international world.
ak ni nga xam ne noonu laa doxee ci àddina si.
We could have done better.
mënoon nañoo def neneen num gënee.
I want you to clarify for this commission.
bëgg nga leeralal commission bi.
Why you chose that word instead of giving us exactly aspects that affect the Gambian people? Because it's not the answer is not we could have done better. My opinion.
Thank you very much.
jërëjëf.
What I had stated was
li ma gaaraloon mooy.
that no country has a perfect human rights record.
amul benn réew moo xam ne nii am na nag lu jëm ci wàllu yelleefi doomu aadama ba mu wér.
But every state aspires to live up to expectation.
waaye réew mu ne nag am na éena pour doxal nag li nga xam ne noonu lañ séntu ci moom.
For the state of the Gambia,
ci wàlli Gambia nag moom.
we were doing very poorly in freedom of expressions.
dal di woon nañu daanu lool nag ci wàlli mbiri àggale sa xalaat ci sa sago.
We were doing very poorly in unlawful detentions.
ñu daanu woon nañu tamit lu aju ci wàlli jàpp nit te tëppoowut ak yoon.
And I am the first to admit that.
te man maay njëlbeen pour nangu loolu.
And I know I have raised that a number of times.
te tamit yaakaar naa yëkkati naa suma kàddu ci loolu ay waxtu yoon yu bëree bëri.
But human rights is not just about freedom of speech and freedom of movement.
waaye nag mbiri àqi doomu adama du rek lu jëm ci wàlli dem ak dikk ak tamit wax ci yëpp si saay sago.
Human rights is also the protection of rights of women and children.
nekk na tamit lu jëm ci wàlli taxawu nag yelleefi jigéen ñi ak xale yi.
Human rights is also to protect the promotion of right to health and education.
bokk na ci tamit di gën a digëral nag yelleef nit am ci wàlli njàng ak wàlli wér-gu-yaram.
And comparatively, Gambia was doing well compared to other countries in that aspect.
Gambia na mu ngi doon def bu baax nag suñ ko méngalee ak yeneen réew ci fànn yooyu.
With regards to provision of educational facilities.
bu ñëwee nag ci mbiri njàng ak li ci aju.
With regards to ensuring that girls had equal rights to access education as boys.
ak tamit nag bu ñëwee nag ne xale yu jigéen yi am nañ même yelleef boo xam ne nii méngale nañ ko yu góor yi ci wàlli njàng.
With regards to reduction of maternal mortality rates.
bu ñëwee tamit ci wàlli jigéen ñi des ci wàlli amam doom ak seen doom yi daanu ci mbootu.
With regards to reduction of infant mortality rates.
ak tamit lu jëm ci wàlli buñ wàññi tamit li nga xam ne mooy xale yi daanu ci mbootu.
This all shows the effort that government was doing in terms of health.
lii yëpp nag nguur gi mu ngi ko doon def ci buñ ko méngalee ak wàlli wér-gu-yaram.
And protection of the rights to the life to those children who could have lost their life but didn't.
tey tamit ak li nga xam ne mooy kaaraange jëm ci dundini xale yooyu nga xam ne ni mënoon nañoo daanu ci mbootu te daanu wuñ ci.
And those women who could have lost their life in childbirth and didn't because of the effort that government had made.
ak jigéen ñooñu nga xam ne ni mënoon nañoo des ci amam doom te desuñ ca ci yëpp nag mu ngi dëppook jéego yi nga xam ne ni nguur gi def nañ ko.
So that's why when we talk about human rights.
loolu moo tax bu ñuy wax mbiri human rights.
It's a holistic setup.
nekk na nag taxawaay boo xam ne nii bu xóot la.
It's not just one aspect of rights.
rek benn wàll rek ci wàlli yelleef.
I'm also the first to accept that.
man maay njëlbéen tamit pour nangu loolu.
All rights are interlinked.
yelleef yëpp dañ leen jokkale.
Just because we were doing well in health and education doesn't mean that we should fail in freedom of expression and freedom of movement.
noonu lañ doon defee nag lu wér ci wàllu wér-gu-yaram ak njàng mi loolu rek warta tax rek ñu bàyyi sàggante ko ci yeneen buntu yi.
That's why I said we could have done better.
loolu moo tax ma ne mënoon nañoo def lu gën a yéwén.
And we still can do better.
tey ba tey mën nañoo def lu gën a yéwén.
No person, no country is perfect.
amul benn réew amul benn doomu aadama boo xam ne nii dal dina mot sikk.
But we aspire to do better in life as human beings, as people, as a nation.
waaye éena nañ nag pour def lu gën a yéwén ni comme ay doomu aadama lañ tey tamit ñu ngeen liggéey nekk ci benn place.
Thank you.
jërëjëf.
For the first time, I'm hearing you say that, admitting that actually there were some for the first time, since in the morning, I'm hearing you say now that you admit that actually there were some human rights violations.
Maybe it's the way you asked it.
Yeah, that's no.
It's the way you asked it. That's why I was able to provide you a direct answer.
Can you give me 3 human rights violations that you are aware of that occurred in this country which adversely affected Gambians?
I can give you an answer as I know now, but I did not know at the time. And that is relating to unlawful detentions. Yes.
So in effect, what you are telling us is that you are only telling us things that you know. And there is one quotation here which you said, I don't overlook on the shoulders of my employees, but as the person directly responsible for supervision of all staff matters, isn't it your right to look over the shoulders of your staff and underneath their shoulders to ensure that justice is done?
Ndax nak do won waxon nga fi ne yow nek lo da ngay top rek gannaaw yi nga xamne ñoy sa ay liggéeyandoor.
Because the impression it gave me is that you didn't know what they were doing.
Waaye nak fogulo ne sa warugal la tamit nga top ba xam li nga xamne ñi sa ron yépp loolu lañ doon def parce que li ma nuru moy ne yow xamulo won ñooñu li nga xamne mom lañ doon doxal.
That's a very good question, but it's not humanly possible.
Loolu nak laajte bu baax la waaye na du loo xam ne ni man a teg doomu Adama la.
In a ministry that has over 100 staff,
ci buntu liggéeykaay boo xam ne dem ci téeméeri nit ñoo fay liggéey.
And over 7 departments.
ak lu dem ci juróom-ñaari buntu liggéeykaay.
I cannot be looking over the shoulder of every department head.
mënuma nekk na di seet mbagg yi ñëpp ñi nga xam ne ni ñoo fay liggéey wala jiite ko.
I trust their competence and their qualification for holding that position.
wóolu woon naa nag seen màcc ak seen taxawaayi liggéey.
I am asking for, you said you to overlook on the shoulders of your staff, whether there are 1 million of them, you have sources through which you could pass to ensure that you know what people are doing, particularly if they are violating the rights of human beings in your country.
Akar nu molo ma bari waron nga am taxawaay yoo xam ne duñ ko mën a jël pour seet ndax ñooñu ñu ngay yàq yelleefi doomu aadama fii ci suñu réew mi.
I think the point that has to be made clear here, Imam, is the fact that violations of human rights were not done directly by staff in my office. That those rights with regards to detention and arrest, that's under the purview of Ministry of Interior.
te yelleef yooyu nag duutoon na yëpp nag daal ci suma ron ministry la nekkoon. jàpp yeeg yooyu noonu nag mu ngi nekkoon ci ron ministry bi saytuwaale doxalin bi réew mi.
So it would not be fair to say that my staff or me or anybody in the Ministry of Justice violated human rights. Nobody did that, and what I can assure you.
du jàll na pour ne nag loolu yelleef yooyu niñ ko xatee ci suma ron la woon rek loolu moom mën naa la koo gaaral.
I am certainly not saying that your ministry is responsible or you are responsible. I'm saying your role as Attorney General and Minister of Justice. And that is what I am questioning.
Thank you. May I respond?
Yeah.
The role as Attorney General,
Attorney General,
as provided for in the Constitution of the Gambia, is to serve as principal legal advisor. It definitely does not mean only legal advisor. And when it came to my responsibilities, God knows I did it to the best of my ability.
My last question is, it goes back to the other question I asked. Can you tell this commission 3 violations that adversely affected Gambians that you can tell us?
laajte bu mujj bi de mooy dama delluwaat la ma laajte woon rek ndax mun nga maa konteel ñetti mbir yoo xam ne yow gis nga ne loolu dafa doon yàq yelleefi doomu aadama ci réew mi fii.
At the top of my head, I can only think of unlawful detention.
ci suma bopp daal li ma ci mën a fàttaliku rek mooy te jàpp nit te dëppwut ak yoon.
Thank you.
Imam C, you have the floor.
Madam Fatima.
Yes, sir.
Witness. What doubts me is
Yaya Jammeh dafay dem be wax mbir.
Yaya Jammeh will just agree to something, say something.
Yéen ay lawyer ngeen moom kamul yëfi lawyer.
You people were lawyers and he didn't know anything about the law.
Yéen kam ngeen atte lawyer, kam ngeen buntu lawyer, am ngeen xam-xam.
You know all the aspect of law.
Moom mu jël lu ko nekk.
He will just decide anything that pleases him.
Mu teg leen ko.
And put it on you.
Ngeen def ko.
And you did it.
Ngeen wax ne loi la.
And you said it is a law.
Te moom def doon mbubboo loi waaye degree rek la doon atte.
And he always lean on the laws, but he is always going by the degrees.
Loolu man jaakal na ma naka ngeen ko doon gisee ak naka ngeen ko doon nangoo.
I doubt that doubts me how you people accepted that one.
Ñaareel bi lépp li nga xamante ne lii mos nga ko wax sa kaddu te jaarut ci loi.
Secondly, all that's what you said and that was not on law.
Te mu lor ci doomi Adama.
And he has violated people's right.
Nga jégulu ko.
You have to seek for apology for
du yow rek nag ñu bari
forgiveness on that. It's not only you.
Thank you very much.
Jërëjëf Imam.
I want to state for the record
dama bëgg a leeral ci record bi ni
that when I give my advice,
man saay bu ma jox yeddee nag su ma ko yeddee ba pare.
It's usually done in accordance with the law.
Dafay nekk loo xam ne dañ koy jaarale ci yoon.
So if it's with regards to, for example, prosecution,
bu fekkee nag ne ñu ngi ko tëralee ci mbiri àtte.
The relevant law is quoted.
Li nga xam ne ni mooy loi ba nam sësee danañ ko seet.
And the decision to prosecute would commence.
Tey tamit dogal bi ñu jël nag pour ñu àtte danañ ko commencé.
I personally,
man ci suma jëmmi bopp.
I have not done anything that has hurt anybody.
Mosuma def dara loo xam ne ni dal dina xoñoñal nit.
Or violated anybody's rights.
Wala xëtt yelleefi benn doomu Adama.
That is not who I am as a person.
Du loo xam ne ni man naa ko doonaa ko man ci suma bopp.
And even all those who are speaking, including counsel, would not say that this is what I did.
Ak mboolem ñuy wax ni boole si na di counsel amul kenn ku ci mën a wax ne lii laa def.
To hurt somebody.
Pour nag xoñoñal nit wala toroxal tooñ nit.
To detain somebody.
Pour teg nit benn place.
Or to do anything that would violate their rights.
Waaye wala def na lépp lara loo xam ne ni dana xëtt yelleefi doomu nit.
That's not the kind of person I am.
Nekkuma façon nit kooku.
That was not the kind of minister I was.
Loolu nekkuma woon façon ministre boobu noonu tamit.
That's one.
Loolu benn la.
With regards to laws.
Bu ñëwee ci mbiri loi yi.
Between 2013 and 2017.
Ci diggante 2013 ak 2017.
Every law that I passed.
Loi boo xam ne ni na pass jàllale naa ko.
Was one way or the other beneficial to the people of the country.
Moom benn wala ñaar yëpp dana nekk nag loo xam ne dana jëriñ nit ñi nga xam ñoo dëkkee ci réew yi.
There was no law that I moved before Parliament that violated the rights of anybody.
Amul benn loi boo xam ne ni àggale naa ko ci pencum néegi député yi mu mujjee nekk loo xam ne dana xëtt yelleefi nit ñi.
In my opinion,
ci suma gis-gis.
I'm the kind of person.
Ma nekk façon nit koo xam ne nii.
If I cannot build and keep the peace.
Bu fekkee ne mënuma taxawal nag jàmm.
I will not destroy.
Duma ko yàq.
And nobody can stand here and say I destroyed their lives.
Te amul kenn koo xam ne mën naa taxaw fii ne man yàq naa seen dund.
Or I did something to hurt them.
Wala def naa loo xam ne ni daal maa ngi ko def pour toroxal leen.
There usually have been many false allegations made against me in public and in social media.
Léegi na dana daan am tuuma yu bari yoo xam ne teg nañ ko ci suma kaw ci nit ñi ci biti ak tamit ci buntu tasekaay xibaar yi ci internet bi.
Which God knows are not true.
Te yàlla xam na ne loolu du dëgg.
But I would not go out and start defending myself on some trivial issues.
Waaye nag duma génn di jéem a baddu suma bopp ci mbir yooyu.
Because no matter how long it takes, I know.
Ndax xam naa ne lum yàgg xam ne.
I will be vindicated.
Danaa mos a set ci loolu.
And I'm going to rest on that.
Te tamit ci loolu laay wéeru.
And my conscience is clear.
Te tamit suma xalaat daf cee leer.
And my relationship with my Creator is clear.
Te tamit suma digganteeg suma borom bi daf dee set.
When I go to bed, I sleep at night.
Te suma tëddee danaa nelaw.
Because I know my hands are not tainted, they are not stained.
Te xam naa ne suma loxo yi daal tilima luñ ko te tamit amul dara loo xam ne ni dañ ma ko topp.
And that's the truth.
Te loolu mooy dëgg ji.
Commissioner Jones, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Singhateh, for your testimony.
Jërëjëf Chairman, jërëjëf Ms. Singhateh ci sa seede yi fi joxe.
My first question would focus on the issue of the Islamic State.
Li ma la bëgg a njëkk a laaj mooy mbiri réew mi def ko réewum Islam.
I read through your response to Jammeh.
Jàng naa li nga xam ne moom nga tontu Jammeh.
Dated the 8th of February 2016.
Juróom-ñetti fanweeri February 2016.
And one of your recommendations was to maintain the formal name of the Republic.
Li nga ko digal mooy daal nañ téye ci tur wi nga xam ne moom lañ xamee woon réew mi.
As it had legal implications.
Ndaxte am na ay mbir yoo xam ne daal bu ko ci defee àndu la loi.
I want to ask a question regarding this recommendation that you made.
Dama bëgg a laajte nag lu aju ci ndigal bi nga joxe.
Was this recommendation adhered to?
Ndax jëfee woon nañ ko.
As in, were letters or correspondence that emanated from the offices or government institutions, including your ministry?
Letter yi nga xam ne ñoo dee jógee ci nguur gi ak ci liggéeykaay nguur gi bokk na ci di yow sa liggéeykaay ba woon.
Did they maintain the name as the Republic of the Gambia?
Ndax ñoom téye woon nañ tur bi na meloon ne mooy République bu Gambia.
Or was it changed to Islamic Republic of the Gambia?
Ndax dañ ko wecci woon tuddee ko Islamic Republic bu Gambia.
My ministry maintained the name Republic of the Gambia.
Man suma ministry dafa continue on turi Republic of the Gambia.
Because I know the legal implication.
Ndax xam naa nag mbiri loi bi nga xam ne ni moo ci lalu.
But others did not.
Waaye nag ñeneen ñi defuñ ko de.
And from the opinion I read, I think I read the second one.
Te lima ci jàng mooy jàng naa beneen bi ñaareel bi.
That recommendation I made to the executive was rejected.
Ne li ràññeef bi nga xam ne moom laa defaloon président bi daal dañ ko mujjee woon dàq.
Were you aware that other government institutions and ministries were not adhering to this recommendation?
Ndax yëgoon nga ne yeneen liggéeykaay yi ñoom ànduñ woon ci ndogal bi?
Yes, I was aware with regards to foreign affairs.
Waaw yëgoon naa ko ak lu jëm ci wàllu doxalin bitim réew yi Gambia.
What about the Office of the President, since you received a lot of correspondences from them?
Vice President bi nag comme que dañ dee jot ay lettres yu bari yu bàyyeekoo ci ñoom.
I guess so, but the thing is sometimes the letterheads are conflicting. Sometimes it would be Republic of the Gambia, others it would be Islamic Republic.
Li nga xam ne moom lañ di def nag ci boppi lettre bi léegoo-léeg de muy féewaloo de léegoo-léeg nga gis fa Republic of the Gambia léegoo-léeg gis Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
It always depends on I think the author of the letter that comes from OP.
Mu ngi des rek nag ci ki nga xam ne ni moo bind lettre boobu jógee ko ci Office of the President.
Are you also aware that there was a directive that all women should cover their heads when going to, I think it was government institutions, I can't remember what exactly it was, but there was a directive that all women should cover their head?
Yes, I was aware.
Waaw yëgoon naa ko. Na sa bu la neex la rek ku la neex kum neex nga musóoru kum neex nga bàyyi.
Because with regards to covering your head, it's a matter of tradition. You choose to or you don't choose to.
Tey tamit nag ngir nag muuru nag loolu nekk na mbir moo xam ne nii mbiri aada la rek bu la neexee nga def bu la neexee doo def.
Beyond just tradition, it's also religious, because I'm a Christian, so I would take offense if someone asked me to cover my head.
Man nag xam nga comme que man nekk Christian la bon dinaa ko gisee ne tooñ la pour nit wax ma ne dama war a muur suma bopp bi.
But you didn't have to. There were some Christians in my office who didn't.
Waaye boobaay doo ko def ndax ma am na Christian yu nekk suma office de defuñ ko.
I definitely did not, but that's not the issue. We're talking about an entire nation of about 2 million people at the time. And you have repeatedly told us about your role, which included being the chief legal advisor to the president. You've also told us that your opinions were based on law. And I would think that it goes against the law as far as it concerns majority of Gambians, because this was not a decision that was made by the people of the Gambia. It was one individual who decided to call the Gambia an Islamic Republic of the Gambia. In response to your question to Imam Jallo concerning rights violations that you're aware of, you mentioned unlawful detention and said you only just found out about it. Can you please tell the Commission how you came to know about this and about it? If you know about it, I'm sure you know about some instances or individuals. Okay.
Of course, definitely, absolutely.
Wow.
Thank you.
And I was honored to have served my country. And I was honored to have provided services that was beneficial to my country. And I believe that every person should sacrifice one way or the other to be of service to their country. Being a public service or be public servant is a thankless job. Nobody would get to thank you. In spite of all your achievements and all the benefits that you have provided for your country and your people, somebody will always find something small to use against you. So I know that I have served my country. And I know that I have done the best I could possibly can as humanly possible as possible. That's okay for me. And I'm okay with it. Whether others see it or not, that's okay. I am satisfied with the work I have done.
Very well said. That being said, however, given the fact that the President made some pronouncements or directives that affected the sovereign will of the people of the Gambia that were illegal,
President bi def na ay dogal yo xamne laal na wa rewi Gambia te andul ak loi.
I respect your stance and the position you've presented to the Commission that all your decisions were based on law.
Fonkana sa taxaway nak li nga xamne mom nga fi ci commission bi ne yow lepp lo dogal rek dang ko wër ci loi.
You had the option to further send recommendations or to resign like others have when those recommendations were not adhered to.
Yo nak mënon nga tan pour ndax ñu nangu li nga xamne moy dogal yi nga ndigal yi nga joxe wala nga bayyi liggéey bi comme que li nga diglé duñ koy def.
Could you please tell the Commission why you chose to continue working even though your recommendations were not adhered to?
Mën nga wax commission bi tax nga continuer di liggéey nak comme que li nga digal duñ koy def.
I will not sit here to tell you that my work was undemanding.
My work
was not a 9-to-5 job. My work was not a 9 to. It wasn't. I did not work between 9 and 5 o'clock. My work was 24/7. And it was demanding and it was intense. But if I were to resign, it would mean that I was giving up. It would mean that I was throwing in the towel. And it would mean that I was admitting defeat. Because every day you go to work, or every day I go to work, I find a way to make the lives of the people I serve better. If I fail in one bit, I will endeavor to succeed in another. It's just like a mother or a father of a home. When there's a problem, they just don't pack their bags and leave the family. Face your difficulties and you find ways of solving the problem. I knew the person I was working with. I knew how stubborn he could be. But I also know that there were instances where I was able to get him to comply with my advice.
And
in many of those instances, I have saved a number of people. And I have fixed a number of problems. But those are the things that would never come to light. Because it affects the lives and properties of people who prefer privacy. Unfortunately, when something goes wrong, you only hear about the bad things. You never hear about the good things that people do. It's only when they die that people will talk about all the good things they did. That's why I say that public service is a thankless job. You do your best because of the service you render. Not because of the thank you would get. Because if you want to wait for a thank you will never get it. That's all.
Thank you. Before giving Commissioner Carr the floor, just want you to clarify one point for me. It's not quite clear to me. When on the Islamic Republic issue.
Bala ma jox commissioner ka kaddu gi dafa am fuma bëgg nga leralal ma rek lo aju ci mbiri ne réew mi ñu jox ko réewi islam.
I think if I heard you correctly, one of the recommendations in your note to the President's office
su fekkee dégg naa la bu baax day yenn yi nga xam ne digal nga ko président bi
was to maintain the name of the country, Republic of the Gambia.
Moy ne ni xamé won réewi Gambia ne Republic bu Gambia nañ téye waat tur boobu na meloon.
While giving it attributes of an Islamic state, I'm a bit confused at the two coexisting.
Lu tax ñuy xalaat
you can just clarify the point.
Wara nekk réewi islam nga leeral ñu foofu.
I don't think I understand the question. You say, why wasn't it? I don't understand the question.
One of the recommendations you referred to
yes.
was to maintain the name Republic of the Gambia.
Yes.
And then I think subsequently mentioned retaining or creating the attributes of an Islamic state. It's that contradiction that keep the name, don't call it Islamic or Republic of the Gambia, but have institutions and laws and other things that attributes of Islamic State. Do you get it?
I don't think that's what I said.
Okay,
unless,
then I misunderstood you.
Yeah, unless Council can share the letter again, because I think I remember stating that because there was already a proclamation that the country would be an Islamic state. All of a sudden, Gambia was being referred to as Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
nekkul ne loolu laa wax de kana kañ Council indiwaat seeta wanaan ñu leetar bi rek ndax am na yébaane boo xam ne defoon nañ ko ne Gambia daal mu Islamic Republic la waaye mu nit ñi commencé di ko ooyee.
My recommendation was, can we keep Gambia the way as it is, Republic of the Gambia?
Man suma tontu moo nekkoon suma li ma ràññee moo nekkoon ndax mënuñoo continuer di Gambia tur biñ ko xamee. Republic of the Gambia. That
we have to go through a process, a whole list of process before we can be an Islamic state.
Ne dañ war a jaar ci ay yoon yu bari balaa ñooy àgg nag ci Islamic Republic state.
And that includes going through a referendum.
Loolu nag bokk na ci pour dem ci benn referendum.
I think that was the point I was trying to make.
Yaakaar naa loolu moo nekkoon point bi nga xam ne moom laa bëggoon a def.
And for me personally,
tamit man ci suma bopp rek.
I believe.
Yaakaar naa ne tamit ne.
That by the time we actually say we're going to go through the process of Islamization of the republic,
jamono bi nga xam ne ñu ngi jël ci dem ci saawo si nga xam ne mooy wéral di réew mi def ko réewi islam.
Before we get to a referendum,
balaa ñooy àgg nag ci referendum,
this issue would have been resolved, I believe.
Tey lii mënoon nañ koy saafara ci li ma yaakaar.
your advice certainly wasn't taken.
It wasn't.
And
he did inform. I was at the United Nations at that time. We received his letter informing that the name of the Gambia had changed to the Islamic Republic of the Gambia.
United Nations jotoon nañ letter bu wone ne soppali nañ tur bi tuddee ko Islamic Republic bu Gambia.
That's why I said that I know Foreign Affairs changed the names.
Foreign Affairs
I met Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, a few days after that in Makkah, and he held my hand for almost 5-10 minutes. And when I returned to New York, he said to me, "Your brother held your hand because you are now Islamic Republic of the Gambia." I told him, "No, that was not it." But Commissioner Kai, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Singhateh, for your testimony before this commission. First question I want to ask you is, follow up to Imam Jallo's question. Because Imam asked you to name 3 human rights violations you were aware of. And you mentioned that you only knew about illegal detention. Looking back. Would it be correct to say you are in touch with the reality on the ground?
Firstly, let me set the record straight. I did not say I only knew. I said the only thing I can think of at the top of my head. And as your second question, I believe is a rhetorical question because you don't expect me to give you an answer for that.
So, would you were aware of other human rights violations then?
I said at the top of my head, the only thing I can think of at the top of my head was illegal detention.
Yeah,
you read media reports about human rights issues in the Gambia?
Media reports such as?
The local newspapers?
I was reading the local newspapers.
So you would be aware of those human rights violations that were reported in those papers?
Like illegal detention.
Thank you. And did you do anything about those issues?
Yes.